Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach, and I want to thank the Ceann Comhairle for having accepted this particularly important topical issue, and indeed Minister Harris for coming in to deal with it. And I hope he will take seriously the issues that I'm raising. Minister Harris will know from his party colleagues the huge controversy that has surrounded the closure of Newbridge Credit Union, both locally and nationally. Locally, it was a union of enormous significance. Its building dominated the local streetscape in very much the same way that it dominated the local community, and the size of the building, if you like, reflected the importance of that building or of that organisation to the community as a whole. So its loss has had a devastating impact on the community at large, but in particular on low-income families. And the impact on low-income families has been further exacerbated by virtue of the fact that contemporaneously the local parish savings club has closed down on foot of legal advice that was forthcoming arising out of the role of the charities regulator. So Newbridge, as a result, has become a playground for moneylenders. And those who are least well off in the local community are the people who are suffering most. And they're the particular difficulties that we have to contend with. But the particular issue that I want to raise today relates to the issue of death benefit or life insurance. One of the significant benefits that came to members of credit unions, and particularly a benefit that was of importance to people of relatively modest means, was the fact that on death they could avail of a benefit, I think up to something of the order of 12,500 euros. Now, the understanding in Newbridge was that when the credit union transferred to the permanent TSB, that all of the loans, the deposits and the benefits that accrued to members transferred to the permanent TSB. And it's only, I think, in recent months that it's come to be understood that the permanent TSB will not, in fact, now provide the life benefit to people. As I say to you, Minister, this is it's of importance to all members, but it's of particular significance to people of modest means and to older people who in many instances would have regarded this life assurance, in many cases the only life assurance that they might have, as providing a fund that would, if you like, bury them when their time came. And people have faced with alarm the discovery that in fact the permanent TSB will not be honouring the commitments that had been in place within the credit union movement. Now, the state has committed, and your department has committed, something up to 53 million euros to the process surrounding the transition of the credit union from what it was to its new manifestation within permanent TSB. And I would put it to you that given the monies that have been paid to permanent TSB, the costs that have been incurred in this entire process, some of it, I have to say to you, highly questionable in terms of the role of the central bank, the role of your own department in winding up this particularly important credit union. I would put it to you that there is a moral imperative at play here to ensure that the people who have had this benefit in the future enjoy it into the future.
Thank you, Deputy.
Who have had it in the past, enjoy it into the future.
Thank you, Deputy Fearghaíl. Minister, you have 4 minutes for reply.
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach, and I'd like to begin by thanking Deputy Ó Fearghaíl for raising this matter in the Dáil this evening and for providing me with an opportunity to provide some information to the Deputy and indeed his constituents on this matter. The Central Bank applied to the High Court under the Central Bank and Credit Institutions Resolution Act 2011 and received approval for the transfer of assets and liabilities of Newbridge Credit Union, excluding the premises, as we know, to permanent TSB. This action was necessary, as the Deputy will appreciate, to safeguard members' savings, as the only alternative option available to the Central Bank was liquidation, which would have seen unprotected savings of €11 million lost. These would have included the savings of charities, of schools and indeed of individuals in the community. On foot of a request from the Governor of the Central Bank, the Minister for Finance agreed to the payment agreed to the payment to permanent TSB of a financial incentive of up to €53.9 million to support the transfer. It's important to provide a breakdown of this. This consisted of €23 million in cash up front, €4.25 million for restructuring and integration costs, €2 million for other transferring liabilities, and a maximum additional €24.7 million to cover additional costs resulting from all loans being written off with nothing recovered. A 50-50 risk-sharing agreement is in place where the resolution fund will absorb 50% of the losses where loans perform below their transfer value and share 50% of the gains where loans perform above their transfer value. The financial incentive provided in the Newbridge case is fully recoupable from the financial services sector over time in the form of a levy, and that's quite important. The strategic approach taken by permanent TSB to the former Newbridge Credit Union Limited business, including the provision of any insurance coverage for customers, is a commercial matter for that entity. The Minister for Finance was informed by the Central Bank that permanent TSB wrote to former members of the Newbridge Credit Union in December of last year to state its intention to fully integrate the business of the credit union into the local branch of permanent TSB. This correspondence included details of permanent TSB's approach for life insurance on deposits and loan protection insurance, which was, as I've said, a commercial decision taken by permanent TSB. All questions regarding those assets and liabilities, as well as queries in relation to ongoing customer products and services, can and should be in the first instance addressed to permanent TSB. The Minister for Finance has asked me to emphasise the Government's recognition of the important role of credit unions as a volunteer cooperative movement and the distinction between credit unions and other types of financial institutions, which is something Deputy Ó Fearghaíl has quite rightly outlined. The Government's priorities remain the protection of members' savings, the financial stability of credit unions and the sector overall. In February 2015, the Central Bank approved the extension of the common bond of Naas Credit Union to incorporate a number of other areas, including Newbridge. This will ensure that credit union services are again available to people in the Newbridge area. In conclusion, this Government is absolutely determined to support a strengthened and growing credit union movement and would encourage the movement to work with its stronger credit unions so they can provide a viable option for assisting weaker credit unions. And I would just make the point that each and every action taken by this Government on the recommendation of the Central Bank was done so to protect the interests of member savings, of charities, of schools and of local savers in the Newbridge area.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Ó Fearghaíl, you have 2 minutes for.
I certainly appreciate the target, the objective of protecting people's savings. I think we're all did on that particular matter. But the issue of death benefit or health insurance is quite a different matter. And in truth, Minister, what you've said in your response is you've passed the responsibility for this to permanent TSB. But the reality is that the agencies of state entered into an agreement with permanent TSB before the credit union was subsumed into it. And therefore, as part of that agreement, the whole issue of death benefit should have been considered and provision should have been made. And the reality is that many people are suffering as a result of this, and that a benefit that they expected to receive on foot of maybe decades-long membership of the credit union is now going to be denied to them by permanent TSB. And in my view, that is wrong. And in my view, that is something which your department should engage with immediately. And in fact, information notes circulated to people in advance of the subsuming of Newbridge Credit Union into permanent TSB gave the impression, because it said the legal agreements that underpin existing loan and other arrangements are not altered by the transfer to permanent TSB. Permanent TSB simply assumes the same rights and responsibilities formerly belonging to Newbridge Credit Union. Now, that was the understanding that people had until December past, when the process was at a very advanced stage. It is not too late yet, I would put it to you, to revisit this particular issue and to do the honourable thing in respect particularly of the long-standing members of the credit union who expected to be able to benefit from this death benefit.
Thank you, Deputy Ó Fearghaíl. Minister, you have 2 minutes for a concluding statement.
Thank you. I'll certainly bring the views of Deputy Ó Fearghaíl to the Minister for Finance in light of our topical debate here this evening, I would just, and I'm sure the Deputy didn't intend, but I would reject criticism of Department of Finance officials and indeed the Minister for Finance in relation to this matter. Every action taken, as I've outlined to you and to the House, was taken with the view of trying to step in to save and protect the savings of the members of Newbridge Credit Union, of schools in the local community, of charities, of local residents, and that was the modus operandi, and I'm sure you accept the bona fides of the Department and the Government in that regard. The other option, which I'm not suggesting you're contending, the other option obviously was the liquidation, which would have been more expensive, but more importantly than that alone, would have also put people's savings at risk. The taxpayer, through the Minister for Finance and indeed on the recommendation of the Central Bank, has put in place measures and indeed funds to try and assist the Newbridge situation, which I want to recognise was an extremely difficult situation, I know, and I have heard, you're quite correct, from my colleagues in the area and indeed from yourself on the difficulties that this has caused. I'm pleased that the Central Bank has made a decision which will see credit union services again available. I'm pleased, as Minister for the OPW, if I can switch hat, to now be exploring how we can get intro services into what was the O Credit Union and look at opportunities for the community to also benefit from what is a very large space, as you outlined. I look forward to working with local representatives and community groups on that. I will convey your views, Deputy, to the Minister for Finance, and thank you for raising this.